This is my conversation with Joe Buliga of the Joe Buliga Show. Thank you for listening. Today, we will speak on the influence of hard work, accountability, and individuality on one's character. I am also proud to announce that we are available on regular podcast platforms including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts for those who are interested in listening without needing to watch. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to my podcast. Here I have my new guest. This is Joe Buliga. We just filmed his podcast just a couple minutes ago, so I will link to his, and you can go watch that if you like. But thanks for viewing. Anyone coming from his too, that I appreciate the views. But today,
my small amount of viewers.
Well, you've been getting more than I've been getting, so I've only done one though.
Well, it's been a whole year, so.
Well, you have some more connections. I think you're also more willing to publicize and kind of put yourself out there. There is something to it.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah. So today I kind of wanted to talk a little bit. We kind of talked about it a little bit on yours in a different sense, but it's more talking about accountability, hard work, talking about character, all those things. We could talk a little bit about work for you and what's you'd consider your drive for what's made construction interesting to you, if it's just been personally or if it's been related to your own family or how that all works. But I think that's the idea of what we'll talk about today. But I'll start it with this. What's your definition of hard work?
My definition of hard work.
What defines hard work?
I don't think it's necessarily your action. I think an action, like your ability to actually go out and, do maybe work is, like when I think of hard work, I think of somebody that's like, oh man, pouring sweat outside. But in reality, it doesn't have to be like that. I think hard work is defined by who you are as a person, right? So if you put your mind to something, so like, if you, for example, if you can't, I hate like mechanical work, so car work, I can't stand it. And if it's one like thing that will drive me nuts, it's that type of work. So I think that if you have the ability to sit and work at something for a good period of time and put your mind to something without giving up, I think that defines hard work, right? So it's not something that's just a physical trait, but it's also a mental and a drive, a passion to have.
Sure.
It's inside of you that you're. And I think that a lot of it has to do with maybe how you were raised, because it can be different for everybody.
So so I would say, linking to what you said, also for hard work, I wouldn't define it as an amount of work, because I think everyone's independent of.
And I wouldn't define it as that either.
So where would you say? Well, there is a line, because I don't want to be blind to some people. Yeah, some people may have to put in more work to produce more, and they're working hard. But is there a line where it would become you're just being unproductive, or how would that work?
When do you define it?
Yeah. Is it a character?
So it's
question?
lazy. I think it's defined by drive, motivation on one side, and then laziness and self-esteem on the other, right? So like, for example, if you have your motivation and you're passionate about something, right? You're going to go after it. Whereas if your self-esteem might be a little lower and you don't have the motivation to go after it, you're not going to go after it, right? So I think your hard work, people who are not hardworking tend to give up very easily, right? So I think that if you give up very, very easily, I don't know if we're generalizing here, but you might be classified as not a hardworking individual because you don't want to put in an extra 5 minutes to try to figure out a solution, right?
Do you think there's a chance that some of that could be linked to, well, you said self-esteem too. So, because if there's a sense that they have a fear that they're not actually going to be able to accomplish it.
Well, I think it's also the fear. So like, and I don't mean to expand on something that we're not getting into, but I think it also has a sense of risk, like what it is, because I started my own company from this thing, and I haven't gone all on my own yet, but I'm wanting to get to that stage. And it's also, what risk are you willing to take? Are you willing to put yourself out there? Some people are more willing to put themselves out there than others, right? Because it could be related to security, your job security, if we're talking about work, could be about personal security, so what your social group thinks of you. It could be, I'm spacing on other things, but I think a lot of people really do care about how others view them, right? So if you are afraid of how others think you might fail, then you might not be as hardworking, and you might not put yourself out there as much, right?
you don't have to answer this, but what do you think motivates you? And because I would define you as a hardworking person, what's the balance of some set? Because there is a portion that I would imagine you're like, I want to look like I'm hardworking to all my friends and the people around me because I find that as, but there's also some sense of self where you feel like I don't want to
Overdo it.
no, more the sense, there's a sense of self where I want to be this person also. I want to be the person who's working hard, not just for the fact that I want other people seeing me working hard.
Yeah. So I think that I like to keep busy because it keeps my it keeps the day going. You think about certain things, you're like, I don't really want to think about that kind of stuff, and it just keeps you motivated, right? So if I stay busy, I stay motivated, and I think that I like to be an example. Like, I have younger brothers, and I want them to be just as hardworking, and I'm not, I don't want to be prideful and say, okay, I'm a hardworking individual, but I do like to stay busy, and how I stay busy is by working and by putting myself in a place where I enjoy things. So, and I like to surround myself with friends that kind of think like that, where they kind of have a motivation factor that they're not just, I don't feel like doing anything today. Well, they actually have a sense of, okay, I want to do this. I have my mind set on this. Like, for example, you're motivated to get your engineering degree, right? You have something that you're going for. And I think every guy, I'm not sure how, the girls think as far as like what they want to do, but I think that guys are always going to chase something, right? Whether it be a girl, whether it be your job, whether it be a hobby, they're always going to chase something. For example, like you started this podcast. You had some sort of drive in you and you wanted to go do it, right?
Sure.
I started my podcast a while back. I had a start of drive that I wanted to do it. I started my own business because I
still have drive?
I still, yeah. I still have drive now because a friend got me back into it. So it's like it's also back to where you surround yourself, how the people around you have a big, I said, there's somebody that said, show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have hardworking friends, more than likely you're going to be hardworking. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it makes sense. There's the sense where, so I could try to rephrase in some sense because I do want to understand. But let's say, so there's some portion that is impacted by the fact that I do want other people to know that I'm hardworking, but along with the fact that I want to be an example of what hardworking is. Do you think that, and that's where I see you want to be hardworking also for a sense of fulfillment for yourself too. And also because, in some sense, it's the right thing to do. Do you think there's a balance could there ever be a level where you would be overdoing it out of a fear that you're going to come off as lazy or you're going to find yourself feeling like you are lazy? Is there a balance between what would be considered too hardworking and the way where you're actually not actually going to be as productive in the long term because you're going to exhaust yourself?
And I will agree. Well, partially agree with that first statement. So
sure.
When you say like overdoing it, 100%, like anybody can overdo it. So for example, I'm just going to use a construction analogy, like a laborer, for example. If you are working, let's say, a typical work week in the United States is, I think, 40 hours, right? So anything above that is considered overtime. So if you guys are putting in 60-hour, 70-hour weeks, it becomes to a point where it's not healthy, right? Because, depending on whether they're single, they're in a relationship, or they're married, the more that you try to chase something, you're going to have to give up something, right? Because you can't have it both ways. And I'm struggling. I'll say this right now, like I'm struggling in my mind right now because I work for a commercial construction company right now, and I'm starting my own residential construction company, which I want to get to the point where I can start doing bigger projects and that kind of stuff. But I'm torn because I also have a relationship with the people at my work, but I also have a sense of drive and a self, esteem where I want to succeed at my own thing and not depend on somebody else. Yeah. I had a family member tell me one time that why spend so much of your time working for somebody else, providing for them, when you can be doing it for yourself? And I've thought about that for a long time. Whereas, like, when it goes back to the security aspect of it, am I fully ready to take that risk where I have no my typical work day, my day job. I call it my day job and then my night job, right? Because I have my day construction where it's a 7 to 3:30, 4:30, whatever it be. I'm stuck on a I'm a 5-day schedule, but I'm on salary, so I'm stuck on this schedule where I have to start at 7, but I don't always get off at 3:30. I might get off at 4. I might get off at 4:30. But once you take that step to the next thing, where if you were to go on your own, it's a big step, right? It's a risk, and you don't know. Can you make it? Like right now, I think I have well, I know I have 2 jobs happening right now. And I know that if I left my job right now, I could live on my work right now. But the problem is after that, right?
Yeah.
So it only can
It's
be
not
so
consistent
exactly,
enough
it's
currently.
sustainable. How sustainable is it? Like I could live up the next probably 2-3 months off of that, but then after that it's like, can you make it? And then there's also a social aspect to it. So there's an emotional attachment to my work because my boss has shown me a level of respect, and he's given me a job where I didn't even have a job interview, right? So it's like,
He
I
also
have
wants you.
exactly.
Clearly, the
So
way
it's a
he's-
different, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a sense because I do respect when somebody or someone shows someone else respect and has value in you. I think somebody that realizes that should show the same amount of respect back because they
Yeah.
know that they've been treated, well, and they've been treated kindly, and I have no complaints. But I think that surrounding yourself by those like-minded individuals only make you a better individual. So, long way around the
No,
question,
well.
but
So, okay. Then related to that, if you being around the people that are being, because what you're saying is surrounding yourself with these people that have the same values as you, which is what you define friendship as. You want to have people that share your friendship and share your values, can also define you. Is there any chance that when does it become toxic? When does it become everyone's overhyping each other in the level where they aren't?
we're like toxic in the sense of, okay, we're working way too much
Yeah,
type of thing,
sure.
or toxic in the sense we're lazy too much, right?
Well, in some sense, I'm not actually that fearful that anything would ever happen
Yeah.
like that, but I kind of find it is fun when you
Take to the
recognize, take it to the extreme when you recognize that there are people that will take stuff
So,
to the extreme.
I will say, like, in the aspect of talking to people and social interaction, that is very important for anybody, right? Because if you take it to the extreme where you, like, for example, we're not hanging out anymore, or my social group isn't hanging out anymore because we're so busy working, it becomes unhealthy because now you don't have your social interaction because people are built, like, the reason big cities exist is because people don't like being alone, right? Some people like being alone. They like to be isolated, but people generally like being around other people that are like-minded and that share their same values. But once you start getting to the point of you have your own passion. So, like, let's say your passion in engineering, you will go out on your own and you did very, very successful, right? And you went out on your own, and let's say you completely turned your back on all of us and said, I am not going back there. I'm going to chase my career fully, right? Mm-hmm. That becomes to the point where it's unhealthy on that spectrum. But it also can be unhealthy on the spectrum going the other way. For example, oh, you work so hard, you deserve a vacation, right? Everybody deserves a vacation when they work hard. But then it becomes to the point of, oh, you worked hard last week, let's take another vacation. Oh, you worked hard last week, let's take another vacation. Where, like, if you can do that in that aspect, maybe it's not a vacation, maybe it's, oh, I just need another day off. Oh, I just need another day off. I just need another day off. And if you have a family,
I earned this.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that, what you were saying in the last podcast, it's the instant gratification where many people nowadays, I think, are blessed where they have parents, they have families that have worked hard their life, and they've got to the point where young people can depend on them. So it's not like they don't have to work. They don't have to go chase something. They don't have a passion because why? They were given things all throughout their life and they never were able to develop a sense of, I have to go do this. Otherwise I don't get it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that a loss or a wound can actually benefit you in the long run because it teaches you something.
So do you think that, oh yeah, I would agree with that, the aspect of some of those things that might be harder will guide you and it'll guide your character and guide who you are. Do you think that your character is also kind of connected to all this? It's almost more like hard work, accountability, all these things that are more defined as good values are built around who your character is and what you value as a. So what would you say, what type of character, because there is a variety of people who would be hardworking, but what do they share within their character that makes them hardworking?
Passion
For what they're interested in for other people, or
for what they're interested in.
Okay.
So, like, for example, like, I'm not going to go to you because you're probably not interested in construction as I am, right?
Not as much.
Exactly, right? So I'm motivated in that aspect. You're motivated in engineering. Clearly, I'm not motivated in the engineering, but I'm supporting your decision because I see you have a drive for it, right? So I'm going to support, and I know that you want to do it. So if you want to do it, you have a passion for it, you're going to chase it. And that's your character. So it's different for everybody. But if you have a sense of motivation and passion for something, I think that defines your character.
Do you think your character also then would be, how would your ethics or your morality link to that portion of your character relating to that drive? Do you think that there's a sense of duty that people would feel, which would be related to their sense of this is what's right, this is what's morally right, this is what is ethically right amongst our community? How would you link that?
So I think that's also a personal
Sure.
thing. So like where, some people are Christians, other people are not, right? So like for me and you, for example, it's different. Like we have a different set of principles and morals. We were raised like that. I still think like
Sure.
that on,
Yeah.
99% of maybe I disagree, with my parents on a couple of things, but it's not like the fundamentals when it comes down to the true fundamentals, we're going to agree morally.
Yes.
Right? So I think it honestly depends on how you were raised and what, for example, like I value Christian friends. I value church. I value the people that I have, in my inner circle that I can trust with things, like I might not be able to, talk to other friends as much as I, might be able to talk to you or, my other close friends. So it's, I think your social group is a really big key factor in how your morals are shaped into your character,
Sure.
right? Because if you don't have, it goes back to the saying, like, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Like throughout high school, for example, like let's say you hang out with the bad group from kindergarten. I mean, you can't really see it as much in kindergarten, but when you start getting like 4th and 5th grade, you can start to identify all these, cliques. And you can see which groups start to go that are exceeding, and you can see the other groups that are kind of struggling, and the kind of groups that kind of go towards the bad path. And those groups tend to stay the same because they don't have somebody that's going after them to teach them, right? And those morals, those people kind of flood to those spectrums, right?
Sure.
Because they like to be around people that they're comfortable with. Oh, I can't do it, so I'm going to go to this side. I'm going to go to the person that also says I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or yes, I know I can do it. Oh, okay, I'm going to go to that person because I know that's the same way I feel, right?
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, because you've answered a portion of this question then that I'm about to ask. What I'm wondering is, related to character then, would you say that it's more impacted than purely by the environment you're raised in, everyone around you? How much of your character would be defined naturally as just genetics? What would be that line? Because you said there has been, and it's clear, there's a giant influence based on your childhood, who you're raised. Where does that line cross to who you are naturally?
Well, I think it becomes to the point.
Sure.
Once it comes to adulthood, right? Because you're left to you're taught a certain way. Most people, it's whatever it is, 18. You classify at 21, or whenever you leave home. So if you've been given everything from 0 to 18, from when you were a baby to all the way until you're 18 years old, and then all of a sudden, your parents are like, nope, you can't leave anymore, right? It's not like you open the door and then yesterday you're a kid, tomorrow you're an adult. It's an ongoing process, right? Because everybody still learns. You never stop learning. And I think that if you accept that, so if you accept the fact that you're always learning, I think you can always grow. But I think, going back to your question, I think more than 90% of who you are as a character starts with how you were raised and what morals are you changed, what morals you grew up with.
Okay.
And then it also because it also is a personal choice from that point on. Once you get to adulthood, you have that choice. Do I continue down that avenue of morals and principles and passion and hardworking motivation, or do I go the other way and try to do it on my own and go through the University of Hard Knocks, right?
Yep.
So,
if you would expound on because I think it's very true that a lot of it is impacted by what we consider normal amongst our community. If something is vocalized as this is a dramatic response, or wow, you're acting lazy, or you're not demonstrating a moral character, then people will all of a sudden start looking at you that way, and then that's going to cause you to change. So then where's I am intrigued. What would you consider the 10%? What is that 10%? You said 90. What does that 10% do? Because that 90, I would say, I would agree. There's a strong amount that has been impacted by your community, by the people you equate yourself with. What isn't equated to those people? I
think because everybody's different. I think everybody has different interests. So, and most of the time you can see it at young ages. What are kids interested in? What are, my mom babysits a whole bunch of kids, and you can kind of tell when you see a kid that's interested in this. I'm going to generalize here, and it might offend people, but like younger girls, they see a baby doll, they like the baby dolls, right? You see a younger boy, he wants to go to the dump truck. That's just how it is. But as they grow up, right? Because every kid at the young age wants to be a firefighter, a policeman, or something that's hero, right? You start off that age and you get to hero, but then you get to more of the mature age where you have the age of accountability and you understand things a little bit more. You start to really set yourself into certain things. Like, for example, that's the age that you start playing sports, right? That's when you develop hobbies. That's when you develop your own personal interests. So I think that 90% of the influence comes from your parents, not in your personal interests, right? So your personal interests are developed in trying new things. So once you develop those personal interests, that's the other 10% that makes it. That's the other part that makes who you are. But I think that motivation, passion, and hard things are engraved in you by your parents and by the social group you're around, whereas your personal interests are some things that you just have to try on your own. It's not because, well, I guess it is because you're pushed to a sense by your parents and stuff to have a motivation to try something, right? Every kid or every parent, I think, wants to see their kids succeed, so they want them to try to do something. And I think that your personal interests just develop over time. So that's the other. I think your personal beliefs, or not your personal beliefs, but the personal things that you try on your own make up that other 10% of your character.
So would you consider that portion of your character, because then I would link everything that you're saying, then that would mean moral sense, ethics sense, some of that is natural. Then there's the aspect that a lot of that is instilled by what's considered right amongst your
social
family,
surroundings,
where the standards are, and everyone does have a moral conscience in the sense where they know they will have they'll have a guilt for what they did. Even I think, because then I look, and I've done some research into some of the extremes of human personality that has guided, like, well, if you look at even serial killers who are notorious for being known that they wouldn't vocalize a sense of guilt for what they did. Even when they vocalized what they did, they said that first murder they committed, they were broken down, like they didn't have any idea. They almost have to power through
that first one
to go and continue,
which is a very dark way of thinking, but I get what you're saying.
It's more the sense of
no, I know
it's still there, that sense of, even though I would say they probably have a less contained sense of morality, they still will have that, even though it may not be as strong as other people's, which it is guided with. If you look at also their childhood, they've been guided by a lot of things that have taken place in their lives where they haven't had a demonstration of what's proper or what's right, or
what is socially acceptable.
Socially acceptable, but even, well, in some sense, they were made fun of. It's more of a sense they weren't even sure that they were cared for either. Where it's that balance of what is actually motivating.
Well, and I think I'll take something that I said earlier, but it's also support that you have, right? It's your surroundings, but it's your supportive group, right? So what are you supporting? Like, if you don't have parents that say I love you, you don't have parents that care for you, parents that are really parents, then I can't remember what the statistic is, but there was a podcast that I was listening to, the same thing, where it's like addressing certain social issues right now with the lack of a father figure, right? I think that said that, like, that if you don't have a father figure in your household, or you don't have a father in the household, you're about 10 times more likely to go to jail. You're 10 times, whatever it is. I don't remember the exact statistic on it, but don't quote me on it. But that is a statistic. So it's like your support group, like your parents, your mom, your father, your those things that you have also correlate to who you become.
From the fact also that often, if it's not like the father's purely demonstrating this is the right character. It just means that if the father's in the home, there is more time for both the parents to demonstrate character,
because
rather than the mom having to be out.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking it that it's all on the father. But
I will say, I feel like even though people will vocalize like this statistic's out here. Right now, it's more they're fighting on the stance of the statistic rather than even saying, well, we're not pointing out. It's just a presence, and it's not just a man providing this. It's where a man.
It's a family.
Yes, and it's this unit that can guide and help to foster a sense. Well, that's where you're going to learn your ethics. It's where you're going to learn what is valuable and what's correct.
Well, I think it also goes back to
that.
Yeah, like you said right there. So, like, just even take it from the opposite spectrum of it. So, like, let's say that the father grows up and is, like, say the mother's in the same concept of it. Most time, the father doesn't have the deep love. Well, I'm sure he has a deep love, but the mother is always going to have that nurturing type care for the child, and the father has it, but he doesn't have it to the level the mother might have, right? So the level that both parents provide is a balance to the kid, and the kid needs balance in order to get those principles and morals, like motivation, all that kind of thing, to be able to go and chase something.
What's the balance?
So for example, let me think about that for a second. So like the father, I think, well, actually, let's start with the mother. So the mother provides the care, the deep care for the child. So like, let's just say, I think, and I was listening to podcasts.
In some sense, affectionate care?
Yeah, an affectionate care.
Yeah.
So like, let's say, because I think men and women both demonstrate
how they love differently.
But I think it also goes back to God's love. So I think women represent a portion of what God's love is, and I think men represent a portion of what God's love is. So when a child gets hurt or when a kid gets hurt, who do they cry for? They usually cry for their mom, right? Because it's something that's a nurturing feeling. It's something that their mom...
They also know what they're going to be getting.
Exactly. They're going to be
a hug. You're fine. You're fine.
It's also...
I'm so sorry.
It's
I'm so sorry.
Come here, you type of thing, which is, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's what a mother is.
That's just who they are.
And it's a spectrum of that, but then it's also like, for example, it's like, okay, take it from the others. Let's say it's a girl, for example, or let's say it's a little boy. A boy is probably going to go out, like once he gets older, 5, 6 years old, he's not going to ask his mom to go play catch with him. Who's he going to ask? He's going to ask his dad to go play catch with him. Why? Because there's that sense of, okay, my mom, I'm getting to be a boy now. I want to go with dad. That's the type of thing.
Also, what people find interesting.
Exactly.
Whereas that more likely the father may say yes, where the mother may not.
And a kid can sense that when he has both of those.
Well, also the fact that if he's going to play catch or whatever he's doing outside was probably an activity instituted by the father,
right? So it's an influence. It goes back to that concept of who your surroundings are. If you have both of those, it provides a balance. Like same thing with the father. Father has love, right? Yeah. But it's more of I think it's a correctional type love than it more of is a nurturing. I think there's nurturing in the father, but I think it's more of a, hey, you're okay type of thing. We can fix this type of deal, where it's more. Yeah.
It's more trying to. There is a sense where even when they look in relationships, where often the guy is more like, I need to. How would I fix this problem? Because that's how they're going to show
problem
they care.
Solving. Yeah.
Well, sometimes women just want you to be there, and I think that this is a general thing.
No,
right?
but I
found that advice in a podcast where they were talking. They're like, sometimes you just have to be there because that's all they want. They want you to they want to know that you're there and you're expressing something. But they don't need a way to solve the problem.
Yeah,
they just want to know that you're there to help.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
So because a lot of this is more just the fact that not everyone, especially when you get into relationships and for the rest of your life, people aren't aware of the standards or even the differences in personalities. When you look at guys and girls, there's a variety of different personalities within those, but they often, the other side can't completely understand until they're guided by the person, and you have to kind of have an open mind towards a lot of it because you don't actually know a lot of
the feelings and the emotions
that drive another person.
Yeah,
because they don't drive you.
Yeah.
That's
why everybody's
other people can
different,
experience them. Yeah, they can experience them, but they don't have the same impact or effect when they look into their life. I think that being able to also, and maybe that's some of the importance of self-reflection, because if you know that this is going to do this to me, then you can vocalize it to whoever that this is actually making me angry when you do this. And they're like, oh, I guess that never makes me angry, but it's good that I know that. Because I don't expect, because in reality, you don't expect them to change. It's like, that's not how it is. Excuse me, I don't get angry when you do that. And I'm like, well, I'm not you. It's the sense of not everyone needs to have that. And I think that there's that balance where a lot of this, and I maybe I've done a lot of research. I found a lot of podcasts on relationships for the fun of it because I find it interesting.
And I find that interesting too because like I told you, I think in the last where we just did our podcast or my podcast before that, I just started listening to podcasts and I was intrigued by it because it was talking about relationships. It's like, man, I never really thought about it that way, right? So it's like, I'm trying to think of an example that he used, and you had said it earlier, like the way that men and women define love is very differently, right? And I think you had mentioned it where like the women might just want you to be there, right? Where a man might want more of a physical,
help me fix this,
or physical thing, or exactly help me type things, or let me solve this type of thing, right? So I think and you just, you sparked my memory there to see, they're two different people, but when they come together, they can be stronger together because they also have, now that they can share each other's emotions, they become better people.
It's true. I think that a lot of that is the impact of it's even becoming aware of the other person. You're not, it's a giant impact when you start to suddenly be aware of, oh, this is another form of reality my perspective I've been living with for 20 years now. It's been guiding me. This is who I am. Wow. I guess they've been also experiencing this numerous amount of years where they've learned who they are, and it's going to be different than me. And that's also the fact of why it'll take time to get to know the person, because they had to spend so much time to get to know themselves. So then it's going to take you a while to understand that person too, because everyone's that way.
Everybody takes time too. Yeah. So it's not like that's going to happen, so
it would almost, I wonder, I don't think it would actually be as fulfilling if
it was
quick. It's almost like it is this thing that
that's
you want
what
to work for.
Why is it so interesting? Like when somebody, for example, like when you first like a girl or something like that, it's so appealing to you because it took you to a point to get the courage to go talk to her, or it took you to the point where you're so excited to do something. But when you look back at it, it is the process that's exciting, right? It's not the gratification, right?
Sure.
It's the process that makes it gratifying.
Well, it's a sense of also intrigue because it's brand new.
Yeah.
You're also also everyone's kind of, the stereotype is when you look, not a stereotype, but it's more the standard is people will jump to a conclusion of who another person is. They kind of they know a small idea of who this is, and then they're going to fill in all the rest of the bubbles
by themselves,
by what you want.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that means that you fill it in with yourself because it makes it easier.
Makes it easier
you match me so much, and in reality, you don't know that person. You need to spend time
with them, get to know them.
And then I will even say, I don't even know how much of that can even be impacted till you are just talking one-on-one. A lot of it seems almost like if you even have just a friend relationship, like you're going to get to know them on that level, but most people hide a lot, or they aren't when are you going to be in a time to talk about all these things that have impacted you or who you are? Most people don't really even know how to talk about who they are without time. And I think that that's been a guide for a lot of people, where it's just finding that balance of how would you find who you are without spending the time finding who these other people are.
With the people that you surround yourself with. And that's why I think it develops over time. So like with the people that you surround yourself with, you start to learn processes, morals, principles that carry on year after year after year, and pretty soon it becomes a habit. Why? Because it was so repetitive. But not only that, but it was something that was, you talk to people. Oh, you share the same opinion as me, right? We have the same principle. So am I doing something right, or is this something? And you become to that age of accountability where now I realize it says right. I'm going to keep going on this same path because we share the same principles. And you keep talking and you get to know people. And that's, it builds your character up.
It's true. I think a lot of, and it kind of, we went in the circle where I think talking about how the character is just impacted by these guides and morals that have been defined from your community. And I think that that's the impact of, it's the whole thing of, even it can create a lot of pressure on people who, even if you look at even cult level places where often if people are raised in it, there's like this sense of, how do I get out of this because I'm so constrained to this,
or I'm consumed by it. Yeah.
And you actually have to kind of change your
100%
perspective because you've been viewing it wrong, viewing reality where, they look at some of if you look at fundamentalists like Mormons who where like these positions where people are like, you get so far deep into these ideas that it's like, how do you back out of it? And then it causes questions for all the normal, the normal Mormons.
Well, it also becomes the thing, and I think it's in the Communist Manifesto or something, that if you tell a lie big enough, eventually over time that it'll be believed, right?
Well, and the fact that also you'll end up starting to believe it. I think.
Yeah.
I heard it was in a podcast. Clearly, they're all from podcasts.
Yeah, everything's from podcasts.
But I think they said that Hitler, with time, with his when he was making all the propaganda, with time, slowly it became kind of even the fact where it's like they would say he even started to believe everything he was putting out there, and he was putting out. In some sense, he already had, but even the aspect of what people had considered normal,
it's the repetitiveness.
It's been the repetitiveness of, well, I guess I am just so good at
what
making
I'm doing.
People think about this way that maybe I am right.
Yeah,
and then that's also how you end up. That's the folly of man. I would say you're so
well, it's also
ignorant
the pride,
and blind.
Right?
Well, that's
and
folly
it's the biggest
too.
thing
In
is
the same sense.
Yep.
It's where it's that you're blind to the aspect of reality, who you are, and what's guided you as a person.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that's been because that's the biggest thing. Because I wanted to talk about, and that kind of all relates to accountability and character, where it's like this has all been a circle in some sense. And I knew that as I would give you credit because I would say you're a very hardworking guy and where you put in a lot of work into stuff. And so I think that it's interesting to see how it impacts your life and other people's lives too, what makes them who they are.
Yeah.
But in some sense, I feel like we all have that relation of what we want. And
well, everybody has a sense of what they want, I think. So It's like, everybody has a goal in mind and what they're trying to achieve. So
I don't know. I feel like we've reached a good conclusion there. I don't know what we're at, but
36 minutes.
Alrighty. We can have a couple more minutes, but I don't want to keep you.
Only next place I got to go is church. So.
Well, there's plenty of interesting things to talk about, and it's more of the sense of I look at it, and I'm like, I enjoy the conversation. Well, it's the whole purpose. You're gonna have to listen to the podcast now because
I'm gonna have to
threw you under the bus that you haven't watched the first one.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched the first one, go watch the first podcast.
Go watch his first
another Joe. That was with Joe Sobel.
The good Joe. No, I'm kidding.
No. Well, they're both good.
No, I'm kidding.
No. Please don't throw me and put me in that position. No, more in the sense that we talked a little bit about personality types there, but I think it's interesting. You look at all these things that have influenced people, and that's kind of what I'm wanting to see. I look at all of these things that have impacted humans and who makes them, like what makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And trying to understand that is very fascinating. I think people, if they understand some aspect of what's making them feel the way that they're feeling, can bring some form of clarity to who you are.
Also to others, I think, too.
True. No, well, that's in some sense, I do the podcast for myself, but I also know that maybe there's a chance that rather than just having people come, there's also a sense that when you say it's a podcast, it makes both of us feel like there's a productive value to coming and doing it.
I will say I have not made a single dollar off of any podcast video I've put out, so This is all out of fun, right? And I enjoy it.
Well, you may have some form of hope that you would end up.
Yeah, I would, but right now I think I've changed my direction as far as because it also, reality sets in, right?
Yeah.
So you start to do things like, what's going to be something that you can provide for?
Yeah.
So like for me, it was, okay, construction business. Most times you see successful businesses. Not everyone ends up successful, but you take your risk at what you're easy to choose. Like you can obviously become successful in a podcast business, but it also takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Same does a construction business, but production is also hard when it comes to video and it comes to production as far as audio and all kind of stuff. So it takes time.
Takes time to learn, that's for sure. I learned that from the first one. I think I spent at least 9 hours trying to find out how to do the first one.
I know.
Which I did switch between multiple different services because I tried Adobe in the beginning, but then I only got the free week, the week thing for like.
Well, the problem with Adobe is that there's so many tools. So it's so vast, and you can there's tools I had because I would have Hunter actually did a lot of my editing. For me on actually almost all the podcasts I've done before this will be because I didn't have Adobe to begin with, and my computer for some reason wasn't working, so I had Hunter edit my videos for me, and but now I'll actually be able to edit the ones I did by myself. So, but I mean Adobe is so vast. I took a class in high school. It wasn't even an Adobe class. It was a Adobe graphic design. So if you ever need any graphic design,
well, there's some interesting aspects to all this, and I think it's kind of cool to see. Well, even the value I saw, I'm like, well, maybe I'll know how to do all of this work that I've never had applicable before.
Well, and it's also going back to the process. Like it's a learning process, and it becomes fun to the thing, we have a goal, and it's something that's you put a drive and your passion into.
Well, I look at it too, and I'm like, well, my aspect for the podcast was more I knew if there's some form of productive value to going and doing it, it's for fun. But if I say, oh, you want to go film a podcast, it's more just like, oh, hey, you want to come over and talk for a little while? That doesn't work over the same way. So I think it adds this value where
It adds a
people
val-
want to
do it.
talk.
Yeah.
And then it makes them feel like, oh, I can. And also in the sense where you feel like you can instantly open up. It's a thing when you listen to these podcasts and you're like, oh, they've never actually talked to each other before.
Yeah. But it's also
But they just do
one-on-one,
it.
right?
Exactly.
So it's like it's a different aspect.
Well, like the fact that they've never spoke and then all of a sudden they're opening up about who they are.
Yeah.
It's more the sense of it allows for that. And I think it's cool because with time, if I'm able to talk to brand new people, it's a kind of field where it's like, I don't have to do the whole, we have to be friends. And then you're eventually going to open up and tell me about who you
it's
are.
a long process,
They'll
right?
just
Yeah.
open up and they'll be where there's that aspect and everyone else is able to experience it too. And I think it's interesting to see how that applies to all of us.
Yeah.
Because I think the whole thought where I'm able to have these conversations and then bring other people along. Yeah, it's cool. You'd always have the dream. Oh, maybe it would reach more people. I have thought about it. Is it if it were to go bigger, it wouldn't be as much that I'd hope to be famous. I don't have any care.
Yeah.
It'd be more the thought if I'm more known, then maybe more interesting people would come on the podcast that I've never been able to reach out to.
And that you'd be able to learn from, or might be, get back and forth ideas.
Exactly. Where it's like I could end up talking to these people that have more knowledge in a topic that I find very interesting that I've never been able to talk to anyone about.
Yeah.
Let's say it's some far high level engineering thing that is not applicable to anyone around me.
Yeah.
And now I would have an application
You have somebody
where I
that you can
actually
do
talk
it.
to.
Yeah.
But and you almost have to build some form of notability for people to want to come and talk to you.
Especially bigger names. They want
Yeah.
somebody that they don't want to go and quote unquote waste their time, right?
Yep.
Because they're not going to get anything out of it.
And maybe in some sense, I think that we all have a hope that we'd have some form of fulfillment, and conversations do a lot for people. It's the whole sense that I think people listen to podcasts from the fact that they just don't want to be lonely. So they get to interact and almost feel like you're participating in the conversation, because as they're listening, they're probably thinking, oh, that makes sense. I like that. Or it's like, I don't know if I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. More from the fact that you're able to experience it yourself. I think that's the application and how valuable it is. But I don't know. I think we can leave it there. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, I did
Joe.
too. This was good. Thank you for having
fun.
me. It was fun.
Of course, it was fun. And if, as I said, we filmed one on his, so if you haven't seen that, go watch that. But I'll leave you there. Thank you for watching, and bye. Thank you for watching my conversation with Joe Buliga. As you heard, I also filmed an episode on his show, which will be available soon. And I'll link his channel in the show notes. Now with a quote from Nietzsche. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Till next time.